This is Kingdom Warrior. I'm your host, Andrea Beam, and every episode we bring you powerful conversations with bold business owners, passionate young adults, and overcomers who have turned their toughest battles into breakthrough moments. We dive into practical business strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset that fuels resilience, so that you can overcome obstacles and scale your calling with confidence. If this speaks to you, hit subscribe now on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode, and share it with someone who needs a shot of bold faith and courage today. Welcome, you guys, to another episode of the Kingdom Warrior podcast. I am your host, Andrea Beam, and today my guest is DeVante Blow. You guys are going to be stoked to hear his story. You guys, we are digging in. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on DeVante, he spent 8 years in the restaurant industry. He is a certified life coach. He is a speaker, an author. Oh, wait, where'd the book go? Right here. Author of Just One Layup. We're going to talk about this book here in the podcast. And you guys, he's a top producing real estate agent as well, which is how we got connected through trainings that our company does. And so I'm really excited to have you on here today. Thank you for coming and being a guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. So DeVante, I got this book. It's so funny, just to kind of give people some background on this. So you were speaking at an event, and I didn't get to go to that event because I was going to a different regional event that our company was hosting. And it's so funny because I started getting text messages from agents that were up at the event, and they're all like, you need to meet DeVante. Like, you guys need to connect. And so, I went and found you on social media, and I was like, hey, listen, if people say we need to connect, then I listen. So sure enough, we talked, and your story is just a phenomenal story. And I am really excited to have the listeners and our audience be able to hear what you have to say, because you got some really good nuggets that we're going to dig into today. So
thank you.
Let's just start with digging into a time period in your life that, we remember peaks, we remember pits, and we remember transitions in our life. What is one of those that really stands out to you in your life as like maybe one of those major things?
Yeah. So great question. One, if I had to pick one, right? Because there's so many.
I know it's hard. We'll probably get into all of them, but we got to start somewhere.
Yeah. We can start in 2017. I was working at a restaurant. It's an Italian restaurant in Coopeville, Washington. It's on Whidbey Island. I'm a Whidbey Island native. So I was working at this restaurant, and I remember a couple from my church. They came in. This is Saturday, and I'm working double shifts on Saturdays. Every Saturday, work a double shift. They were coming in, and this was like midsummer, so like it was packed. They come in, and I wasn't their server, but I greeted them. Like, hey, how's it going? You know what I'm saying? This person take care of you. It was good to see you guys. And then Sunday morning they came, and they were like, hey, DeVante, the food was great, man. That was really cool. They said, but when we walked in, we saw you drop your head as if you were ashamed of where you were. And I was like, oof.
Ooh. Called out.
So for the first time, what was, happening on the inside was manifesting on the outside. I was unhappy. I knew that God was calling me to a bigger and better, opportunity. I felt like I had peaked at the restaurant, but I still stayed there. And even after this incident, I still stayed there for 2 more years because I was afraid to launch. I was afraid to leave the island and then be the guy that, comes back to the island because I failed. I was afraid of looking dumb because I didn't know what I was doing, or, just trying to start something new. But ultimately, God had the final say. And what's funny is March 17th of 2020, this was when we got the shutdown order. And that's when the restaurant shut down. And God was like, hey, I tried to a couple of years ago. I tried to give you an easy out and let you go. But now I'm telling you, it's time to go. And honestly, COVID, with respect to everybody who suffered during that time, was probably the best thing that ever happened.
Isn't that funny how sometimes God has to like smack us upside the back of the head? He's like, okay, you haven't gotten it so far. I keep trying to tell you. And now you're going to really listen.
Yeah. So that happened. And my wife and I, we made three crazy decisions in June. Everything in June. We got married in June. We moved from Whidbey Island to Bellingham, Washington, and then we started completely different careers. She's a mental health therapist, and I jumped into entrepreneurship, life coaching. I tried, what was that, marketing. I was going to open up a marketing company, and then I landed on real estate. And it wasn't even that I landed on real estate. I met somebody who was a faith based person who was in real estate, had a very prominent name out here, and he believed in me. He saw something inside of me that I didn't see in myself. And so I tell people to this day, I'm like, listen, I just so happened to stumble into real estate. If this person that I'm talking about was selling Cutco knives or Kirby vacuums, I would have done it. Right. So real estate kind of just happened, and it's been an amazing journey so far.
Man. So you moved, you married, and you had a new career. I mean, nothing like turning everything upside down and shaking it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the world was already going crazy, right? So I was like, you know what? Hey, let's do three crazy things. And when we moved out here to Bellingham, we only thing we had lined up was the apartment that we were going to rent. My wife didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do, but we just knew that God was calling us. So we said, let's go.
So I want to go back to something you said, because you said, look, God called me to this actually 2 years prior. Didn't make the move, dug your heels in, whatever that looked like. You had fear around it. You were afraid of looking dumb. So talk me through that a little bit, because I know for a fact that so many people do this when they feel called to something. They know that they're called to something. And it's kind of funny because they throw out, and look, hey, myself included, like I'm throwing myself under the bus here, but you look at this thing that God's called you to do, but you throw up all these like roadblocks yourself, like, well, but this and but that. So talk me through that a little bit, because 2 years is a long time to like drag your heels on it. What else was going through your mind at that point besides just the fear? Like, were you having conversations with God around this? Were you arguing with him? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So you know what? I had found myself trying to make the shoe fit, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm.
I was just trying to be like, oh, but God, if I don't do this, then that means that I won't be able to be the praise and worship pastor anymore. Or I won't be able to help my grandparents with the church, or, I had to uproot my son from the community. So I was just making every excuse possible. But honestly, I was terrified because I knew that the next level that God was calling me to, it required me to further myself and to better myself and to open my mind to bigger thinking and the possibilities. At that time, I thought either the restaurant was going to be the thing that I did for the rest of my life, or I was going to take over for my grandparents at their church. Like, I thought those were the two options that I had in my mind for my life. God was like, why are you limiting me? Right. I was putting limiters not only on myself, but on the God that I served. And so what's so funny is like after that event that I told you, when my friends came in, every day it was like something was happening to where it's like, this is not where I'm supposed to be, until finally, like the last straw. I mean, I didn't even leave until COVID. Even after this, the restaurant owner who I've known and loved for a long time, I don't know if he was having a bad day or, but he yelled at me in the middle of the restaurant, when it was busy, and I'm just like, I give him the benefit of the doubt because I've known this guy for a very long time, but man, that hurt me to my core. And I
Yeah.
was so embarrassed, right? And it was like,
Yeah.
DeVante, wake up. This is not where you are supposed to be. It was almost as if God was showing me, like, almost every day after that, you're not supposed to be here. And so he's making it more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable. And so finally, even after that event, I had to share the story. I hate sharing the story, but I had this lady come in, an older lady, and she had just come from getting her eyes checked or something. She had like those really big glasses, that you
Yeah.
get when your eyes get
Oh, yeah,
checked.
the dark ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's a busy day at the restaurant. I sit her down. I'm taking care of her. I helped her over to her seat. And maybe 30, 45 minutes into her being there, she takes off those glasses. I guess her eyes had adjusted. And I wish I was exaggerating when I tell you this story, but she looks up at me and she says, "Oh my God, you're black." Gets up and gets out and walks out of the restaurant. Didn't pay, didn't do anything. And this is like, And everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'm like, wow, this is embarrassing. But still another, like, that happened. I'm not mad at the lady. It was clearly God still telling me, DeVante, you are settling for a life that I did not call you to settle for. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Like,
you know
I'm
what I'm saying? Like,
continuing to
what am I
ask.
supposed
I'm
to do?
continuing to ask. And now maybe I'm going to shove.
Yeah. So I was overcome with fear, and honestly, my small mindset was trying to win over. Comfort was trying to win over, but ultimately, God had the final say. So I'm thankful for that.
So that fear, because you've mentioned you were terrified, you were afraid. So you finally you finally get it. You're like, okay, look, I get it. You're trying to get me to go. When you did finally make that decision, and you didn't make just that decision, like you made a couple big ones, right? Moved, married, career, all the things. You were like, well, why don't we just do everything? So how does that now start transitioning you into the next phase of life? Like what were some of the lessons that you learned in not just that period of dragging your heels on your calling, but now moving into, okay, I'm listening to what you're calling me to step out of, and now you're stepping out in faith. What were the next couple of years like after you finally listened to that shove from God?
Yeah, you know what? It was a mixed bag. But ultimately, here I am 6 or 7 years later, and it's like, God, wow, I see how you were orchestrating everything. So the first year, got into real estate, and the first year in real estate was massively successful. My wife she's crushing it, doing her therapy thing, and we're cruising. My son is having a good time at the new schools. Like it's like, wow, we bought a house in our first year moving out here. Like it was like, whoa, we're kind of cruising, you know. And then the second year, my second year in real estate, my wife was actually struggling with some physical things. It was pulmonary embolisms. Mind you, my wife was 27 or 28 at the time, right? So we're out playing basketball at a little squad. I don't know why I said the name, like you know what I'm talking about. We're out playing basketball. We're an active family. We love to be outside, and we're there for maybe 5 minutes, and she's like, hey, I'm not feeling good. She's getting a little dizzy. And so I was like, whoa, let's go. We take her in. Doctor's like, hey, I'm so sorry, but you have blood clots all throughout your chest. He's like, you were the youngest person in my 20 years that I've ever had to put on blood thinners. I'm just like, oh man. Right. And so it kind of took its toll on me mentally because I'm like, man, we're newly married. You know what I'm saying? I've known her for a long time, but we're newly married. We're into this entrepreneurship journey, and I had to juggle, being there with my wife and then also going out and making money, getting provisions. And so then we fast forward a year later, almost to the date, and then we find out that my wife is struggling with or battling with breast cancer.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, uh, so I went, when we found out it was in June, when I went almost 6 months without selling the house. So it was June. I remember in December, and I love this story because it just shows how God orchestrates everything. In December, I'm down to $50, like to my name, not like $50 in my pocket or like just $50 in my checking account, $50 to my name. Right. And I'm nervous because we have to drive down to Seattle, Cancer Care Alliance for each one of our chemo sessions, and then there's surgeries and everything. Right. And so I remember in December, God spoke to me clearly. He said, take X, Y, and Z out to lunch. And I was like, God, I don't know, God, hey, you know everything. You know the number of hair on my head. You gotta know my wallet is tight right now.
You
Like,
have to know that piece too.
you gotta know that. But you know what? I remembered that every time that I surrendered to God, He showed me His faithfulness. And so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, this isn't gonna be a long thing. So I text the person that was on my heart, and it was like, hey, would you like to go out to lunch? And they're like, yeah, let's go to Scotty Brown's. And so Scotty Brown's isn't like it's not expensive, but it's not cheap, right? And so I'm like, ooh, for the first time in my life, y'all.
You're like, can we go to Burger King?
Like, can we go to the dollar store and like maybe we could get like a breakfast or something? But no, so for the first time in my life, I ordered a salad. I told the person, you can get whatever you want. Mom, I'm gonna get a salad because I was nervous, right? I'm $50. The bill came out to $43 and like 16 cents. And I'm just like, wow, my gosh. But little did I know that in January of the next year, and a month later, that person would sell their house and buy a house with me And that was the beginning of multiple six figures in my life. And I'm like, okay, God, that act of surrender in what I would say was probably one of the darkest times in our lives, like one of the most stressful times in our life. God was like, I will bless your obedience. And so my wife is completely healthy, having an amazing time, and we're thriving. And so that was probably the scariest thing that happened in the first couple of years. But ever since then, God has just been opening up doors.
I love that so much. I think it's important to maybe take note of that, because it's easy to think sometimes, and I think this is maybe even where some of the fear, some, not all of it, but where some of the fear can come from when God's calling us into something new, right? And this is why we're dragging our feet, and we don't know. We're blind, essentially in some cases. And so, but there's this thing that this false belief that A, if you're a Christian, that's going to make your life easier. And B, well, if I follow what God's calling me into doing, that's also going to be easy, right? It's just gonna, I'm going to have a path of rose petals, and it's all going to be fine. And so I think it's important to note some of the things that you went through, even after listening to God's calling. Like, you knew you were doing the right thing, and yet you were still under attack in the sense of, both physically, financially, spiritually. You're under attack, and you had just obeyed, right? Like, you listened to what God was calling you to do, and yet these things still happened. For you to take that step of faith, to take that person to lunch, is fire. Like, straight out fire. Like, $43, right? You got $50 in your checking account, and $43 is what it comes out to. I mean, hindsight is always 2020, right? You get to look back and you get to see all these things that happen, how they orchestrated together. But man, if that doesn't just get you, the miracles that happen in the middle of our survival, and there's literally miracles happening around us. Sometimes we can't see them until later. That's so powerful. So, you mentioned that your wife had two major medical things going on, fairly back to back. What was some of the things going through your mind during that time? Like, how did you, from a faith standpoint, do you feel like, actually, I'm gonna actually ask this question instead. Do you feel like you've ever had doubt in your faith, or do you feel like you've ever, maybe not even doubt, but at least questioned, right, the path that God had you on?
Mm, that's a good question. I would say in post 2017, no. And the reason is just because, there has to be like a crazy surrender to do the things, you know what I'm saying, that God has called us to do. And it's funny, the way that my wife and I found each other and connected was through praise and worship. Like, she has a beautiful voice, and I was a praise worship minister, and we connected that way. And even when we moved out to Bellingham, away from our home church, we found a church out here, and have been serving even in the midst of the pulmonary embolisms, and even in the midst of the cancer journey. We were still front and center praising God. You know what I'm saying? And so that anchor that we had, I believe, helped us to turn to him instead of turning away from him, especially in those moments. God can do way more with $50 than I can. He could do way more with, a surrendered heart in that time than I could do.
Yeah.
I couldn't heal my wife. As much as I wanted to take that away and put it on myself, or take it and throw it, only God could do it. And
Yeah.
so you question them in those times, I think probably, not probably, it wouldn't happen. To question God when things were very beautiful, when the money was like more than I've ever made. Money, now
Yeah.
that's the question. You know what I'm saying? When you've achieved success beyond what you thought was normal or
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
that's when it's like, and it's not even a questioning God. It's like, hey, do you forget who brought you here? You know what I'm saying? And my wife and I, we have a community around us that will always help us to stay grounded, because it can be easy, right? I mean, you're on stages, you're speaking, you have a book out, you have all these things, and people can oftentimes say, "Oh, DeVante, you're amazing. You're so amazing." If I don't continually point the glory back to God, then that
Hmm.
could go to my head. and I could start to get pompous, and then God would have to humble me, you know?
Yeah. You got to check your heart. What's your underlying motivation around it? That's so good. There was something you said I wanted to go back to. When you're talking about now you're on the other side of the spectrum, right? Now you're making really good money. And it makes me think of, so there's a chapter in my book that's getting ready to launch where I talk about thermostats.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've ever heard this analogy before, but there's this analogy that we're all on a thermostat. So our comfort level, we get used to a certain way of living. And it's common that if you fall below that, you find a way to work your way back up, right? Like at all costs, you're going to figure it out. But the lesser known part of the thermostat is the other side. Like when you're being successful, a lot of times you see people intentionally or unintentionally self-sabotage because they're in an uncomfortable state. Their character hasn't caught up to where they're at, right? In their sense of like finances or success or whatever. And so it brings them back down, right? Like they'll blow up their business or they'll do something in their business, not intentionally either. Like they feel like they're maybe giving themselves relief because they've hit a ceiling or they're burning out. And so it brings them back down. And so I love the analogy of the thermostat and what you're saying, because it really it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's like, but for you, like you noticed that, like you already had that ability to say, okay, I got to stay humble in this, or, God gives and God takes away too. So how, now you grew up in the church, right?
I did. Yep.
So give us a little background on that, because everybody's story is a little bit different. And so you had a good solid foundation, but tell us a little bit about growing up. Like what made what developed your faith as you were growing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So unorthodox. So my mom had me when she was 15 years old. My dad was, I think, 16 or 17. And this was in California, military family. My grandparents were in the military at the time, and my dad's parents were in the military. So this is in California. When my mom gave birth to me, soon after, we had to, due to military, we had to relocate to Washington State. And so I'm just a baby.
Yeah.
But now I'm a baby that's being raised by a baby in her parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And they're military, and then got into the church as well. So I grew up without my father, in my life for a long time. And the precipice obviously was, military moving us away. He was just a kid himself. However, now looking back at it, I'm like, wow, I'm the oldest of 20 kids. And that's
How many?
of 20 children. Yeah. The oldest and probably going to be the shortest. It's okay though.
Wow. The oldest of 20 kids. Not many people get to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. The oldest of 20 kids. I know all my brothers and sisters, like, don't ask me birthdays or
birthdays to keep in your head for sure.
Yeah. Don't ask me birthdays. But you know what? My earliest memories, honestly, we were at church all the time. We had Sunday, you had 2 services. Monday was church cleanup. Wednesday was Bible study. Thursday was praise and worship practice. And Saturday was men's Bible study or men's breakfast. So I grew up in the church, and it wasn't until I was 17 that I actually was like, you know what? I can't get into heaven on mama's prayers or grandma's prayers. And so I took God myself. That's when I rededicated my life to Christ, and I started living for Christ, for myself. Now they built amazing, amazing guardrails around me. Like to the point where I love telling people this and they don't believe me, but I've never sipped alcohol a day in my life. I've never smoked anything, no drugs or anything like that. I was super studious about sports, and that's because growing up in my grandparents' house, my aunts and uncles are like my brothers and sisters. One of my aunts is like 19 and a half months older than me. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So they're literally like my brothers and sisters, and we would push each other and to greatness and everything. And growing up in a military household as well, or a military place, I got to see everybody as a smorgasbord. You know what I mean? I didn't grow up in a predominantly white or predominantly black place. I grew up where there was everybody.
Yeah.
And so I believe that helped raise me to this day as well. And being able to go in and out of any room, because I've been in rooms where there's a lot of Filipinos or a lot of Asians or a lot of Mexicans or a lot of blacks. And, we have a good time, and so My upbringing was really, it was church, school, and football.
And football. Yeah,
And football.
I do remember football days with my boys very well. So did your dad ever come back into the picture? Like, I mean, was all 20 kids from your mom and dad?
No, so I'm the only one from them. My mom had 7
Okay.
children, and then my dad, Papa's a Rolling Stone, he has 13. So,
Okay.
whew, and probably counting. I don't know. My youngest sibling is, I think, just turned 2 or 3. So,
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's the epitome of a big family right there.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what were some good lessons that you feel like you learned? I want to go back to when you said, how old were you? 17? When you felt like I want to repeat what you said because I wrote this down. I think this is a mic drop moment and you kind of skirted over it, but I was like, whoa, wait, stop. You can't get into heaven. Did you say mom's and grandma's prayers alone? Is
Yeah.
that what you said? Yeah. I was like, that's good. I mean, it's different to grow up in the church and to have a relationship with Jesus. Like those are two totally different things. I can totally relate to you on this because I grew up in the church too and wanted to be a missionary like by the age of 12, but also walked away from God at the age of 16. And so because it was a lot of, my stepdad was a pastor and it was a lot of, for me anyway, it was just a lot of checking boxes, right? I was a PK and it was all about, at least for me and like what I remember, and I don't think they ever intended it to be this way, but it was a lot of checking boxes, smile here, shake hands there, it was just, it was very super, super structured and check boxes. And so there really wasn't this opportunity for me to build, there was a relationship with Jesus, but it was not as deep as it should have been. And so I can really relate to that piece. I have to ask, like, is there something for you when you were 17? Like, what was it that gave you that realization that you're not going to get into heaven on their prayers alone? Like, was there something that happened, an event, or did that just thought pop into your head one day? Like, how did that exactly come about, that realization?
Yeah. So I'd say a couple of different things. Number one, so growing up with my grandparents, I also was blessed enough to have my great grandparents in my life as well.
Wow.
So I was, from an early age, I was really interested in what the adults in my life had to say. And like, I was a listener, like, you know what I mean? I'd listen to my great grandfather, James Blackburn, tell me about his war stories. And I mean, his hands were the biggest hands I've ever seen. I felt like a little boy, even in my adult years, I felt like a little boy in his presence. It was just like so beautiful. So I'd listen to them and that was, I just regurgitated something that they said, but the realization of what they said happened. I'm 17. I think it was my senior year of high school. And, being invited out to parties and everything. I went to one party in high school, one party. People were getting drunk. And I don't know if there's drugs involved or whatever have you, because I'm a church boy. So I'm already out of place. Like they're trying to dance and I'm doing the holy 2-step. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I stuck out like a sore thumb. But I saw in that moment that they can, my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, they can tell me till they're blue in the face, but I have to live it.
Yeah.
And so even when I was at that party, I was so uncomfortable. The person that brought me to the party was having a good time and I was ready to go. I just walked home. This is late at night, right? Like, of course it's Oak Harbor, so it's not a huge town. I think at that time, maybe 20 or 25,000 people, but I walked home. And when I was walking home, that's when it hit me. I'm like, dude, I have to sleep in the bed that I make. My grandparents can love me. My mom loves me. My dad loves me. All those people love me. But at the end of the day, the decisions that I make will directly affect me. So I think that's around the time where, it all clicked.
Wow. I have to sleep in the bed that I make. Not everybody gets to that space as young as you did. It happens to us at different time periods in our life and at different junctures in our life. But it's interesting because you said I was so uncomfortable at that party. And so that makes me think of, obviously you were convicted, right? Like you were very convicted being at that party. And some of us listen to that conviction and some of us don't. Where else in your life have you felt convicted?
Mm, where else? Well, I mean, as a father, as a husband, as a businessman, geez, the list goes on. As a man, right? I'll share this. So my father and I rekindled around the age of 20, right before I got married at 21, which, wow, that's a whole testimony and story within itself. But my father came to my 21st birthday, and I'll never forget this. He came, there wasn't a huge relationship at that time. So he came with a wad of ones, and he's thinking, oh, we're about to go to the strip club. He's about to, we're about to go and, drink a whole bunch. The 21 run is what it's called, and all this other stuff. And so he pulls up, and he lived in California, but he was a truck driver at the time. So he loved to drive. So he just drove the family up, and he was like, all right, what are we doing? And I was like, Pops, I was thinking about actually just having like a jam session at the church. And he looks at me. He's like, he's laughing. He's like, yeah, man, that's a good one. That's a good one. He's like, no, where are we going? We were in the church on my 21st birthday, and my dad cannot believe it.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So you were at the church jamming out for your 21st birthday.
That's what, yeah, yes. That's what I want.
So, okay. So then that goes into, and I have to ask, and I mean, yeah, I feel like we're kind of open booking this at this point, but
yeah.
So was your dad in a relationship with Jesus at all up until that point? Like had he ever been?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a funny story, and it's his to tell, but I'll give you some. He grew up in the same church as my mom and my grandparents and his parents. And it was the church, there was a lot of church hurt, even from my grandparents and my mom. When they left that place, they don't talk about that place a lot, And so my dad, he grew up in that church and wasn't able to leave. And so he has a lot of church hurt, and I believe that he believes in God for sure. I believe that he knows God. I know that there's a lot of church hurt that he still harbors even to this day, and I know that God is using me, using my wife, using my son to be the church for him right now, and there will come a day, right? Because some come to plant, some come to water, but God brings the increase.
Was the church hurt around having you at a young age, or was it other stuff?
Yeah, it was around having me at a young age, but also they're older than myself. So they grew up where it was a lot more fire and brimstone, and they would call you into the front of the church and expose your sins in front of everybody and things like that. So it was a church that I didn't want to grow up in, just hearing the stories from everybody that I know that went there.
Yeah.
But that was one of the keystone moments.
It's interesting because you talk about him coming up to visit you on your 21st birthday, you guys landing in the church to be doing music, worship, all of that. And I think back even on my own story, like kids are such a powerful tool, that God uses in our lives. And I love this for you because you do have this unique opportunity to be able to witness to him, to be able to, you've got this relationship with him that's going to be, it's different than a relationship he might have right with somebody else. And so I just feel like kids just have this really powerful thing about them. And, I used to let my kids, I didn't want to go to church. After I had my boys, I let them go to church with a friend and her boys, because all of our boys were like best friends, and she would invite me to church, and I would like, I got to do laundry. I got to cook. I got to mop. I got to get groceries. I'm sure the list was like a mile long, and I'm sure I came up with a lot of things I had to do, but wouldn't go. But they would always ask me, Mom, you going to go to church? Mom, you going to go to church? Mom, you going to go to church? And don't get me wrong, like it took a couple years of this, but they would go, and God really used them to get to my heart, to plant seeds, I guess you should say. Because eventually one day my friend asked me to go to church, and I went, and and it changed everything for me. And so I love the aspect though, that you were like, no, Dad, we're going to church. Like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So do you see other areas in your life, like how do you and your wife like minister outside of the church, or, because I don't know this about your story, but I do know that you're heavily involved in church. I think you said, you guys do worship, you play, don't you play a musical instrument?
Yeah, I sing and I also play the piano.
Okay. So talk to me about that. Like, what does witnessing look like for you?
Yeah. You know what? I was always the one that's like, let's do things a different way. Let's do things in an unorthodox way. Very much outside of the four walls of the church type of mindset. And so the way that my wife actually, I guess I'll rewind a little bit. The way that my wife and I actually met was I was putting on a concert with a band that I had called DeVante Blow and True Horizon. And we're singing all gospel songs that I wrote and produced. But the biggest differentiator between that team and my praise worship team was for the church, you had to be going to the church for like 6 months. You had to go through this onboarding and everything just to be able to use the gifts that God gave you. Right. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that that's what it was at the time. I felt as if there were people that wanted to join and wanted to use the gifts that God gave them, but there was not a paywall, but there was a wall that they had to overcome pretty early on into, I don't even know this Jesus guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I wanted to create something to where we're going to sing gospel songs. I'm not going to do secular songs. But also, you don't need to be going to my church for 6 months. I had people in my band who were, I'd say, probably agnostic. They weren't atheists. They were agnostic. But they had such a good time. And they're playing gospel songs. People were getting saved. People were worshiping Christ. You know what I'm saying? And so that's, I believe that even still to this day, my wife and I, our greatest strength is not up there singing. We have a great time and we do an amazing job. But we have people over our house. We take people out for lunch. We have movie nights. We invite people to our house so much. And I believe that, just walking it out, I am never one to beat people with the Bible. It's your walk. I want to be a living epistle. I want to be a living testimony. You know what I'm saying? That when people ask, they've been around for so long, that, okay, DeVante, listen, you and your wife have such a good time. You guys laugh. You guys have joy. What is it? Hey, boom. And that's my anchor. Let me tell you about a God that I serve. Right. And
Jesus
so now,
glow.
the Jesus glow.
The
Exactly.
Jesus glow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not me because they don't know about, and what's beautiful is we get to share, but they don't know about, the hard times that my wife and I had.
Yeah.
The friction that we have, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe the miscommunication, that was my fault. I didn't take out the garbage when she asked me to the third time. You know what I mean? Like I'm still human, guys. There's no perfection inside of me.
Yeah.
But I serve a perfect God. And so that's what we display when we're out there and we're having this good time with people. And we're out singing in public, or we're taking people out to dinner and things like that. That's our ministry.
Yeah.
We pray almost every night that God would continue to make us a lighthouse for those, what I'm saying, who are out there and are struggling, for couples, for individual males for myself, and for individual females for my wife. We just want to be a lighthouse.
So good. I loved how you said that, you're just walking it out with them. I truly believe, I mean, people can get saved anywhere, right? And I'm not trying to take away from the church in any way, shape, or form. But I do think there's something about our society today, and honestly, always, I think there always has been, where that aspect of meeting people where they're at is such an integral part of being able to connect people with Jesus, because they may not they're not going to wake up and go, oh, I got to go to church today, or I should go to church today, or geez, I really want to meet Jesus, so I'm going to go to church. That can happen. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but so often our ministries and connecting people to Jesus is bringing him to them, right? Whether they're, I actually get an opportunity here soon. I don't know, it might be this Saturday, it might be the next Saturday, but to go out and street evangelize, right? To go out and just take out sandwiches and waters and pray over people and meet people where they're at, right? Like just go walk it out with them. And people are struggling. Like I feel, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it's everywhere. It's people are struggling so much right now in all walks of life, and not just a little bit, but like a lot. Like they're getting hit over and over and over and over again. And I feel it like in my core. So I love this. I love this that you're sharing this, because I think this is a huge part of the church today and not just the church, but it's our responsibility, right? Like we as a body of Christ should be going out and taking this out to people that are hurting in different ways. And that could look so many different ways. Like you just described a whole bunch of different ways that you do it. And I just love that so much, so much.
Yeah, we have to be unique. God calls us to be wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves, right? And he also says, "Go ye therefore." He didn't say, "Hey, go to church on Sundays." Go ye therefore. It's a
Yeah.
highways and byways. You know what I'm saying? And so that's a great commission. We're just trying to
Yeah.
live it out.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Jesus did that all the time in the Bible, right? He was always meeting people where they were, like the woman at the well, right? Like I was just listening to a sermon this morning and they were talking about that. So that's the first one that comes to mind. But like that he was doing that all the time though. He was always meeting people where they were at. And I love that how you said that. So talk me through a little bit about your business now, kind of bringing it up to current. How do you incorporate God into your life, into your business? Are you vocal about it in your business? Do you keep it separate? Like, how does this work for you? And kind of talk me through that a little bit currently.
Yeah. So currently, I'm not. I wouldn't say that I keep it separate at all. Because I mean, God gave it to me. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Amen.
And I'd be a fool to not give glory to Him, even in that aspect.
Let's go.
Now, I again, I'm not one to beat people over the head with the Bible.
Yeah.
I tell people, when I meet new clients and we're walking around houses and whatever have you, or I'm coaching them, I introduce them to part of my life,
Yeah.
right? And so that brings out a natural curiosity. People are curious. If you lead with curiosity, I mean, just sidebar, if you lead with curiosity, you'll get to know so much about people and you'll also learn so much, right? And so I, when I talk to people, I'm open about, yeah, hey man, I believe in God. I am but I won't be like, hey, do you go to church? Blah, blah, blah. If that's information you want to volunteer, oh man, we're going to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? But then also introducing people to my wife and my son, and like I give them the whole like shebang, if you will. Like, yo, this is who I am, because I'm
Yeah.
not an in your face person, but I am an in your face person. Like my presence, you will feel me. You know what I'm saying? Like if
You're
you choose to work with
charismatic.
me, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? Like I'm there, man. We're gonna have a good time. And so, I tell people about the struggles that I've had, the struggles that my wife has had, but I also am very open about well, hey, we believe in a God who is healing. We believe in a God who orchestrated every little detail of that part of our journey. I'm very vocal about that. When I record, I mean, you can go back and look at, a lot of the reels that I've made. I'll, I'll talk about something and then I'll mention, hey, it was God. It was God, so I incorporated a lot.
Have you ever had, so one of the things I've noticed within the real estate industry, and then this is not just the real estate industry, but just for me, since I also own a real estate company, the ability for us to be able to minister to people in some of their toughest situations, right? Because as real estate agents, one of the things that we deal with so often is, I mean, we're almost like counselors or therapists, right? Like, I mean, I kind of say it jokingly, but it's not. Like, it's real. You're dealing with people's happiest moments, you're dealing with people's hardest moments, whether that's, death or divorce or having, a sad transition in their life or whatever that looks like, and or hardships. Maybe they're losing their house. And it's brought so many opportunities for me to just be able to pray over people, and I'll just ask, would you mind if I prayed over you? And I've never had anybody turn me down, not one single time, and I was always nervous about it for a while. Years ago, it made me nervous when I was first really coming into having a really strong faith. It would make me nervous, but I became bolder and bolder about it because I don't want to leave that moment unsaid, right? I don't want to leave that moment without at least asking. And like I said, I've never had anybody say no. So it's been a huge opportunity to plant seeds for people, regardless of where they're at, what they believe. I mean, it's the beauty of our industry,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, DeVante, tell me a little bit about this book because I want to make sure I leave enough time on here for us to talk about your book. What was it that caused you to start writing the book? What led to that?
Yeah. So this book, you know what? I actually had in my heart that book maybe around 2011, 2012. And it was actually supposed to be geared towards college kids, college athletes who are transitioning back into the civilian world, right?
Okay.
They're not athletes anymore,
Yeah.
but just the title "Just One Layup" is a basketball term, and I use a lot of sports terminology to help people understand how you can take what you've learned from basketball, from football, from golf, from whatever, and apply it to the real world, right? And really, I started off by using a couple different athletes. So by the time I wrote this in 2019, Steph Curry, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's one of the greatest basketball shooters of all time. He plays for the Golden State Warriors. In
I don't
2019,
know a lot about basketball, but I know the name.
yeah. There you go. As long as you know the name. Well, 2019, he was in the Western Conference Finals going up against the Raptors. And this guy, like, his shooting percentage is crazy. Like, every time he puts up a shot, it pretty much goes in. Well, he was having the worst game of his life. First quarter, 0 points. Second quarter, 0 points.
Man.
Midway through the third quarter, still 0 points. It took him
Man.
almost like 3 quarters to get a bucket to go down. Now, mind you, he's the great like 3-point shooter, so that's like farther away from the basket. But his first couple of shots that he hit were layups. Now, this is the greatest shooter of all time, but he, in order to get his momentum back, had to take the easiest shot to start to build up momentum. And then they win that game. He scored 33 points in just over a quarter and a half, which, I mean, that's in teams, whole teams don't score that much,
Yeah.
oftentimes. But he did it by himself,
Wow.
just from getting back to the basics and taking the easiest shot that he could. And so I took that and I was like, okay, I'm in real estate now. There's a lot of real estate agents out here who are struggling. Well, let me help them out. So with just one layup, and this, it cross-pollinates. If you are an entrepreneur, if you're growth-minded, this book will work for you. What can I do on a daily basis that is the easiest shot that I can take to start building momentum so that I can hit the big three, so that I can take the big shot when it arises? Can you make 5 calls today? Can you make 10 calls today?
Mm-hmm.
Can you commit to doing one open house this week?
Yeah.
Right? For real estate agents, entrepreneurs, can you commit to reaching out?
Yeah.
Can you commit to the business plan and the easy things? Because a lot of us, we want to get flashy. I want to be the luxury real estate agent. I want to do the waterfront houses and blah, blah, blah. But when somebody's calling you and they want to lease a property or it's a piece of land, you're like, no, it's okay. What? Take the layup so that when the time comes, right, you can hit the big three. So that's where the book came from.
I love this. What is something in here? What's an insight maybe that's in your book? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to read through some of your like chapter names here because you have the struggle, the early years, habits, and incremental success. Those are just the first of the few, or a few of the first. What's something from your book that you would want to leave with listeners? A lesson maybe that you wrote about in your book?
Yeah. So a lesson that I wrote about in my book, and honestly, a lot of the book is my story too.
Mm-hmm.
So I show you in real time in my life of what I'm talking about. So the incremental success, I really like that chapter. And I like the methodology of this is, hey, listen, we've probably all heard of it. What's the best way to eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. Yep.
One bite at a time. Right. And so, and it goes along with the title of the book. If you want to be successful, know that it's going to take 10 times more than what you think. And it'll take longer than what you think. Don't get enamored with the TikTok stars who blow up overnight, right? Because they probably have been recording content for 5 or 6 years before.
Yeah.
That. But the incremental success is like, okay, instead of making a 5-year plan, let's make a 90-day plan. And then let's break down that 90-day plan week by week, right? In incremental success, if I can be 1% better every day, that's a lot of percentage in a year, right? I am better. And so break down your goals, like even more so than what you think. Like, okay, yeah, I want to make $100,000 this year.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's reverse engineer that. For real estate agents, what's your average commission? What's your average sales price? What is your conversion rate if you're doing open houses or phone calls or internet leads? Okay. So that we know I'm just making all this up, right? But if you make 80 calls, you get 3 appointments. And out of those 3 appointments, you typically convert 1. Okay, perfect. So then if you want to make 100,000, we know that this is your average sales price. We know that for every 80 calls, you convert 3 of them. And out of those 3 appointments, you make 1 sale. We know the formula to get you to $100,000.
Yeah.
So we break it down. Now, are you committed to doing it?
Yeah. 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 It's a yes or no. And there can always be this disconnect too between like the reality and the stated. So I had a coach tell me one time, like, you can state any goal that you want. And if you're not willing to do what would be necessary to hit that goal, then that's not the real goal, right? So what's the real goal? Because there's a stated goal and there's a real goal. And the real goal is the one that you're willing to commit to doing. And so like you just said, like, now, are you willing to commit to it? And, that's such a big part of that, or the first decision, right? Like you gotta be willing to decide and to make that commitment and not go back on it.
Yeah. Again, I think I said this earlier, but you have to have a crazy belief in yourself. Like
100%.
more so than the regular person. Like as an entrepreneur, you have to be almost like crazy.
Yes.
Like I believe in myself more so than, you know what I'm saying, I should. And the reason is because it's going to require more of you, right?
Yeah.
And kind of a segue, but that's probably one of the biggest hurdles I had as a person who has been, grown up in the church when I moved into entrepreneurship. Because I'm used to pointing, I'm a praise and worship leader, pointing to God. You know what I'm saying? Pointing to God. In entrepreneurship, there has to be a lot of like, hey, hire me. Hey, use me. Hey, I'm the best person for you, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a lot of pointing at myself, right? And there was some friction there because I'm like, my Instagram, I'm talking about myself way more instead of, talking about God. And it felt a little icky, but you gotta do it. And God understands.
Yeah, I know. I mean, being in a sales industry, you are the brand, right? For this industry, you are the brand. And that's hard for a lot of people that get into this industry too, right? To put themselves out there that way, because it is a lot of that. You have to, in order to be known, in order to be seen. And if you're not findable, then you're probably not doing a lot of business, and you got to be findable. Which means you got to put stuff out there. Oh my gosh. All right. So let's talk to people a little bit about where can they find this book? Amazon?
Amazon, everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, books.com, everywhere.
Okay. Awesome. So everybody go buy the book. Fantastic book. And then how do they follow you on socials? What's a good place for them to follow you at?
Yeah, I'm old school. So it's my name, DeVante Blow. At DeVante Blow is probably every handle that I have.
Awesome. No underscores, dashes.
No 1, 2, 3 underscore,
I love it. Awesome. Okay, you guys, go follow him. Go read his book. I am so excited that you were able to come and join us for this podcast. And little maybe sneak surprise, we're looking at having DeVante as a guest for an event coming up at some point. So everybody just keep your ears out. Just keep your ears out. I'm not releasing any details yet. So, but be on the lookout for that. And I am super stoked that we got to have you. DeVante, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.